The third question you asked was about which was harder, the logical or the evidential problem of evil. The logical one, as you know, can be explained like this. Christians typically have believed that God is all-loving and all-powerful, omnibenevolent and omnipotent in the technical terms. But we know that evil exists in the world. Now, that means that perhaps God wills evil in the world, but in which case can he really be all-loving? Or perhaps it means that God doesn't want evil in the world, but can't do anything to stop it, therefore he's not all-powerful. So that's the logical problem of evil. I think that that's not so difficult to respond to. You could talk like Hick does about evil being part of human growth and human change, or you can talk about God stepping into our suffering, that God isn't just above and beyond it all, but that in Jesus, particularly in Jesus dying on the cross, God shares that suffering himself and offers us a way through and out of evil by promising us new life in the afterlife. So the logical problem, I think, is a little bit easier than the evidentiary one. The evidential problem of evil is just the sheer fact of evil all around us. And I think that really is hard because we all see evil in the world, don't we? Whether it's the natural evil of suffering, like the people who suffer because of COVID-19, we can see moral evil, particularly evils like conflict or racial injustice or poverty. So there's evil all around us, and you can't ignore that. You can't pretend that it's not there. In particular, I think the Hickean notion that evil is a kind of test, suffering that leads to growth and change, doesn't hold water in the end, because lots of suffering doesn't lead, obviously, to any good thing happening. It'd be very hard to say that something good comes out of some horrific trauma, like, for instance, the attack in the Forbury Gardens recently. I don't think you can explain that or try and justify it. So if you did, it would almost kind of cheapen it. It would pretend that it didn't happen or that it wasn't such a bad thing after all. So the logical problem, I think, can be dealt with. The evidential one is much, much harder. And probably the existence of evil in the world is one of those things which have meant many people find it hard to believe in the Christian God, a God who is supposed to be a God of love and justice. So I think the evidentiary problem is the harder of the two. I don't think there's a complete answer to that question, except to say with St. Augustine that evil and suffering is irrational. There is no good reason for it, and if you tried to come up with a good reason for it, you'd be cheapening it or almost kind of wishing it away. The only thing from a Christian point of view to do is to acknowledge the evil in the world and do our best to be compassionate and caring to those who are suffering. Final thing I'll say on that. Christians believe that although good can come out of evil, that doesn't justify it. But I think it is important to see that sometimes we can behave in a way which brings good out of difficult circumstances. Think of all the community coming together to support people who can't go out shopping or get medicine because of the virus. Think of all of those expressions of togetherness and goodwill after the attack. So although we can't say that there's a good reason for evil, we can say something about how we can respond to it.